Alright guys, in that last video we were working with some perimeters and areas of rectangles, parallelograms, squares, and triangles. We want to look at the same thing here with circles. Okay, so this should all be reviewed for you guys. Okay, so we have a circle right in the middle, we have the center. Okay, and so we have the diameter. Okay, now the diameter goes from one side of the circle all the way across through the center to the other side. Okay, so it has to go through the center. Okay, and then the radius is just the difference from the center on out to the circle. Okay, so this is really important. Okay, so because of this, okay, the radius is always half the diameter. So if we look all the way across, this would be a radius right here, and this would also be a radius. And in any circle, the radius is always the same no matter where you measure it. So these two guys would have the exact same measure as this radius. Okay, so for instance, if this was 5 centimeters, this would be 5 centimeters, that'd be 5 centimeters. And the diameter would be 5 centimeters plus 5 centimeters, or 10 centimeters. Okay, so the radius is always half of the diameter, always, okay, in any circle. Okay, so rather than perimeter, okay, we don't call the distance around a circle a perimeter, we call it a circumference. The reason being is that perimeter is reserved for figures that are made up of segments, okay, and of course, a circle is not made up of segments. So rather than calling it the perimeter, it's called the circumference, okay? Circumference, okay, of the circle. And then we have area. Area is area. Okay, so we have this circumference formula and this area formula. Okay, now, in these formulas, you have pi, okay? So we know this guy right here, pi, we call it. All right, now I know in the past, you've had teachers that say, okay, well that is approximately 3.14, which is a really bad, okay, approximation. It's a really bad approximation. Okay, the reason being is that pi is a number, it's a decimal number, that goes on forever and it never repeats. So this would go on forever and never repeating, and so we're going to round it off to 3.14. That is a very bad approximation. Okay, so in all of these problems that we do with circles, we leave pi as pi. Okay, so this pi, it just stays pi. Okay, and therefore our answers are exact. Okay, now something that you may have not been taught in the past, but pi acts like a variable. Acts just like a variable, so we treat it like a variable, okay, when we're working with it. And I'll show you what I mean. It's really easy to work with. But the cool thing about it is if you just leave pi as pi, your answer is exact, okay? You don't have to round anything off. So we will never, ever do this, okay? This right here, never in any class that I teach, okay? Never, because 3.14 is a bad approximation. Okay, so these are the formulas we're working with. So the area formula is always pi times the radius squared. Okay, never changes, always the same. With circumference, you get two different ones. Okay, circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. But remember, 2 times the radius, that's just the diameter. Okay, so in any circle, if you take the radius and multiply it by 2, you always get the diameter. So sometimes rather than writing 2 times pi times r, they just go pi times the diameter. Now, either one of these is good to use. I usually use this guy, okay? This is my go-to guy. I don't know, probably just because I'm used to using it. I rarely use this guy, okay? But if you want to use that guy, you can. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? All right, so let's take a look at some of these problems and let's see what we come up with. Okay, so let's start with that first one, okay? And so let's see, okay? I have a circle and the radius is 6.4 inches. Okay, so I'm going to do the circumference first. Circumference is 2 pi times the radius. Okay, so in this case we get 2 pi times 6.4. And circumference is like perimeter, it's linear units, so that's just in inches. Okay, so the pi acts like a variable, so it would be like 2x times 6.4. So we just multiply the 2 times the 6.4 and leave that pi, okay, hanging on the end. So we're going to go, in our head, we're going to go 2 times 6.4 right there, and then we'll have a pi, and then we'll put our inches. Okay, so 2 times 6.4 is 12.8. So I'd have 12.8 pi, okay, inches. Okay, that's easy enough. Okay, so let's do area now. So area equals pi times the radius squared. Okay, so let's see, we're going to get pi times the radius, which is 6.4 squared. And this is area, so it's squared units, so it'd be squared inches. Okay, so that's where you go to a calculator and you go 6.4 and you square it, and so we get 40.96. So we had 40.96 pi, okay, and that's squared inches right there. Okay, see how easy that is to work with? Okay, let's do that second one down. Okay, so now we have a circle and its radius is 4x squared centimeters. Okay, so again, I'll do circumference first, so that's 2 times pi times the radius. So in this case, I get 2 pi times the radius, which is 4x squared. Okay, and this is circumference, so it's linear units, so that's going to be in centimeters. We have centimeters here. Okay, so we take this, we go the 2 times the 4, okay, 8, and I have the pi, and then the x squared. Okay, and that's centimeters, like that. Easy enough. Now, some people might say, okay, well, what if I switch the pi and the x squared, and so they write it as 8x squared pi? That's okay, centimeters. So either one is good. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, now let's do area. Remember, area is pi r squared. Okay, so we're going to get pi times the radius, which is 4x squared, and we have to square that whole thing. And remember, this is area, so it's squared units, so this would be squared centimeters. Okay, so I got that pi out front. Now you got to square everything in here. So when I square the 4 squared is 16. And then x squared, when I square it, I get x to the 4th. Okay, and I have square centimeters. Okay, so we have a 16. Then you make a decision. Do I want the pi to go first or the x to the 4th to go first? So you could say 16 pi x to the 4th like that, or you could say 16x to the 4th pi like that. But both of them are going to be square centimeters. Doesn't matter which way you do it. Okay, so just like over here, either one of those two answers is correct. Same thing here, either one of those two answers is correct. Just a matter of how you want to write your answer. Okay, so we're good so far. Now we got to do the third one down and the fourth one down. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, so that number 3. Okay, I have the radius is 13 centimeters. Okay, so my circumference is 2 pi r. So we have 2 pi times radius, which is 13, and then the whole thing is centimeters. So all I have to do is just go 2 times the 13. So I'm going to get 26 pi. okay? And that is centimeters. That one's about as easy as it gets. Okay, then I do the area. Remember, area is pi times radius squared. So I got that pi out front. My radius is 13 centimeters, so we'd have 13 squared. And remember, it's area, so we get squared units. Okay, so I'm going to get pi times 13 is 169. And that's squared units. And if that acts just like a variable, which I told you earlier, then we'd always put the number first. So we'd write that as 169 pi. Okay, and that's square centimeters. Okay, that guy's pretty easy. Let's do this last one. Okay, so my radius is 5m cubed, and that's yards. Okay, so my circumference is 2 pi times the radius. So I get 2 pi times 5m cubed. And it's linear units because it's circumference, so it's just like perimeter, so that's yards. Okay, so let's see. I'll go the 2 times the 5 and get a 10. I'll put the pi, and then I'll put the m cubed, like that. Okay? Now remember, this is just like a couple problems we did previously. You could switch the pi and the m cubed, so you might write it as 10m cubed pi if you wanted to. Okay, oh, this is yards squared. Okay, all right, so remember it's square units. Oh, wait a minute, no, I take that back. We're not doing area, we're doing circumference, so that's linear units. I take that back. Okay, so that's just yards. Okay, so again, either one of these is good. Either one. Okay, we're in good shape. Okay, let's do the area. So remember, area is pi r squared. So we get pi times, I got to square everything here. I got to square all of 5m cubed. Okay, now this is area, so of course it's squared units. Okay, so I get the pi out front. Now when I square 5m cubed, I got to square everything. So 5 squared is 25. When I square m cubed, I get m to the 6th. Okay, and that is my unit of measurement is square yards. Okay, so we have 2 different ways to represent our answer. The 25 goes first, we know that. I could put the pi second and the m to the 6th third, like that. Or I could switch these two, so I could write it as 25 m to the 6th pi. Okay, either way, I'm going to get square yards. Same thing here, square yards. Okay, so once again, either one of those two is correct. Okay, that takes care of our second video.